What's up, guys? It's Brent with Lykins Motorsports. This is our small block Ford tunnel port motor. Sometimes things just don't go the way you want them to go. We just, not too long ago dynoed that 900 horsepower Ford FE. I was on a high, because of that. And I thought I was going to jump into this tunnel port build and get it on the dyno and surprise Mr. Mark with some good numbers and everything. But I've had I've had nothing but trouble out of this thing. We've dynoed it 2 weeks in a row. The first time, so when I say dyno, that's very loose. We haven't even made a pull on it. So I took it down last week and we got it fired up. I checked the timing, and you got a vent hose that comes out of the tank, and I usually just leave it hanging like that to vent. And I noticed I was getting some fumes, vapor, steam, whatever you want to call it, out of there. So I opened up the tank and was getting stuff out of the tank. So I looked down in the tank and it looked tannish. So that's a pretty good indicator of water. So shut the engine down and we go sniffing for where the water leak was. Well, the water leak was under the mounting bar for all of the T&D rockers. So these are race heads. They're different from the street heads. The street heads oil through the push rods. They use a rocker stud, traditional style rocker arm. The race heads used a specific block that oiled the rockers up through the cam bearing like an FE does. So that passage, since I was oiling through the push rods, since there is no hole from the cam bearing on this block, I just left it alone. What I didn't notice was that it intersected a steam hole on the head gasket. So no problem there. It was easy to fix, and sealed it up and put it back together and fired it up again. We were still getting steam, vapor, smoke, whatever you want to call it, out the vent hose. So when I say I don't know what to call it, it's because I really don't know what to call it. It wasn't water, it wasn't steam, it wasn't condensing like water would. There was no milkshake in the oil. I use this driven oil that turns kind of like a neon green if there's water in it. There was no water in it. The smoke did not feel oily, so it would be there steaming or smoking, and I would be doing this. It didn't feel oily. It didn't smell like oil. So I thought, I've had this happen one other time. It was on an FE Ford, and I didn't catch that it was using factory heads. I didn't catch that the intake manifold gasket covered the exhaust crossover port in the head. So what it was doing was it was actually putting combustion exhaust smoke into the lifter valley, and it was going up, finding a high spot, and it was puffing out the breathers. So that was an easy fix. So I thought, hey, maybe I got something like that going on. These heads and intake are pretty much untouched as far as port work, as far as modifications, with the exception of our scavenge port back here. So that means that the factory crossovers are intact and everything. So that's the way that I left it. I wanted to see what these heads and intake would do as they were delivered in 1968. So I thought, hey, maybe I've got a leak and it's putting exhaust gas from the crossover into the lifter valley, and my dry sump pump is scavenging from the lifter valley and it's pulling all that vapor out. So pull the intake manifold off, welded up both crossovers, also blocked the crossover ports in the heads. Fired it up this morning. Within 5 or 10 seconds, I set the timing, and guess what? Puffing out the hose, open the tank cap, all this vapor and everything coming out of there. So I'm thinking, well, we didn't fix anything. So the next step that we did was we did a leak down test. So we basically eliminated any water issues. You know, I pulled the valve covers. There was nothing in there. There was no evidence of water. I was confident that the exhaust crossover deal was done. So that left blow by, okay? So we did a leak down on all the cylinders. And what we found was the outer 4 cylinders leaked down less than 10%. Now, that's pretty good for a cold motor that has not been, we haven't even made a pull on this thing, so the rings are not fully seated. The middle 4 were leaking between 60 and 90%. Okay, so you take that data and you think there must be a head gasket problem or something with the heads. The head gaskets match the block. Maybe I just didn't catch something, and you know, these are funky heads. Maybe the head gasket didn't match the head. I think that Ford used O-rings and copper gaskets, if I understood correctly. But we should be able to use, you know, a head gasket on this. So we're thinking head gasket issue. So pull rocker gear off, pull the head off. Looking for traces of anything that was going on with the head gasket. Everything matched the block. We've seen no evidence of anything crossing over, you know, anything like that. Pulled the head off, turned it upside down, laid the head gasket on it, same deal. Head gasket worked. There was no issues with that. Put a Cometic head gasket on it, put the head back on, leak it again, same deal. So that time, you know, torqued the head back, did everything again. That time, again, all the rockers are off, put air into the cylinders, nothing coming out of the intake port, nothing coming out of the exhaust port. Everything was going into the crankcase. Okay, so now what? So we've got 4 pistons that are bypassing combustion gases into the crankcase. Why? So I'm a human, I make mistakes. It's quite a possibility that I jacked up a set of piston rings, that I did something wrong on one piston. It is very unlikely that I did it on 4 pistons. It is even more unlikely that the 4 pistons that are leaking down the most are in the centers. So 6, 7, 2, 3. I don't know what in the world's going on with this engine. So on the way back from the dyno, I called Mr. Mark, and I am so very thankful for customers like him. You know, I've had some customers who are, you know, very rough, tough, gruff, whatever you want to say. I wish all my customers were like Mark. He's like, you know, take a breather, you know, work on some other stuff, you know, we'll figure it out. And, you know, that pulls stress away from me when people talk like that. So I am going to tear it down. I have to tear it all the way down. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And look for a smoking gun. It's not going to be this weekend. I've worked on this thing for, kind of like 2 weeks, and I've lost sleep over it. It's just, I just don't like, you know, when things don't go right. But I'm going to tear it down. So one of the things that I'm going to do, I'm going to drop the oil pan off of it. Here's my theory, and see if you guys agree with it. The pistons had vertical gas ports. It is entirely possible that the piston manufacturer drilled in the wrong spot, drilled too far, did something that essentially made a path for combustion gases all the way through the piston. So the normal path on a vertical gas port is to combustion gases to go down, get behind the rings, and push them out towards the cylinder wall, thus increasing ring seal. It's entirely possible that something's wrong with those, and it's just letting the combustion gases just straight to the oil pan. What's the coincidence that I had 4 and they're in the middle of the engine? I don't know. I'm kind of grasping for straws right now. So bounce some ideas off some other guys on some phone calls. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drop the oil pan. This head is not tight. I'm going to re-torque it. And then I'm going to put some air pressure into the middle 2 cylinders here and turn the engine up where I can see what's going on. Hopefully, maybe I could shoot some soapy water. Maybe I could put some automatic transmission fluid in there with it. Turn it upside down and see what's going on. That's the game plan. So, like I said, sometimes things just don't go the way that you want them to go, and I have no control over those things. The other thing is our Aviade dry sump pump was popping out 108 psi. So no clue what that thing's doing. It was doing it last week. I called them and they said, hey, what's your oil viscosity, what's your bearing clearances, what all's going on? I gave them everything. He said, should be idling at like 30, and probably 100 psi is probably what it would put out. You can take the relief valve out, and there's 2 springs in there. You can drop the inner spring out. It'll drop it by 20 or 30 pounds. And I'm like, hey, cool. So this morning, dropped that relief valve out, pulled the inner spring out, put it back in there. The thing was still doing 108 pounds. So I'm probably going to have to send that back to Peterson and just let them take a look at it, make sure everything's okay with it. That's where we are. I am tired. I'm hot. It's nasty, humid, hot here in Kentucky, and I need a break. So I'm going to leave that with you guys, and if y'all have any just wild ideas as to what's going on, post it in the comments, because I'm at a loss. So there you go. Y'all be good.